Hello and welcome to Illusion Abyss, the channel where we explore life's illusions. This series is called Simply an Insight, and we'll find out about that on the next page. So, in his book, The Corrections, Jonathan Franzen says, "And when the event, the big change in your life, is simply an insight, isn't that a strange thing? That absolutely nothing changes except that you see things differently, and you're less fearful and less anxious, and generally stronger as a result." Isn't it amazing that a completely invisible thing in your head can feel realer than anything you've experienced before? You see things more clearly and you know that you're seeing them more clearly. And it comes to you that this is what it means to love life. This is all anybody who talks seriously about God is ever talking about. Moments like this. Um, so this quote stuck out to me, and I decided to make this series. And it's about the moments in my life where my worldview has completely changed, or I have come across revelations that have changed my outlook on life. And for the first episode, I've decided to go with Gone Girl, and specifically the Cool Girl Monologue from the movie edition. So the book and movie have slightly different versions of this. The Cool Girl Monologue, which is the most famous part of the story of the book and the movie. Um, but for me, so this film came out in 2014, so I would have been about 20 years old. And I remember I didn't see it at the movies or anything, but I was just had the TV on and the movie was on. It was just an afternoon. I didn't know much about it. I just put it on because I really had nothing better to do. And I don't even know if I caught the start of the film, but I had just been watching it for a little bit, and the character of Amy Dunn um, just launches into this monologue, which is now famous, about how she doesn't, basically about how she resents her husband Nick for, I don't know, putting her into that role of the cool girl, or just being the woman in the relationship. And I just remember it really stuck with me, and I was just frozen on the couch watching it, because almost that up until that point in my life, I had never experienced um, someone explain this type of thought process, or like this type of evil almost. Um, so we'll get into it. So I've got it all written down. So over the next three slides, there's a section of each part of the monologue. So I'll just read it all the way through for each slide, then we'll talk about it. So it starts off. Amy's in the car. She's driving away. It's assumed that she's missing, but then the revelation comes that she's alive, and it just sort of hits you in the face. So she sort of has this monologue. She's not saying it. It's like her internal thought process, but she says, "Technically missing, soon to be presumed dead, gone, and my lazy, lying, cheating, oblivious husband will go to prison for my murder. Nick Dunn took my pride and my dignity and my hope and my money. He took and took from me until I no longer existed. That's murder. Let the punishment fit the crime. To fake a convincing murder, you have to have discipline. You befriend a local idiot. Harvest the details of her humdrum life and cram her with stories of your husband's violent temper. Secretly create some money troubles, credit cards, perhaps online gambling. With the help of the unwitting, bump up your life insurance. Purchase getaway car, Craigslist, generic, cheap, pay cash. You need to package yourself so that people will truly mourn your loss, and America loves pregnant women as if it's so hard to spread your legs. You know what's hard? Faking a pregnancy. First, drain your toilet, invite pregnant idiot into your home, and ply her with lemonade. Steal pregnant idiot's urine. A pregnancy is now part of your legal medical record. Happy anniversary." All right, so the I guess the famous part of this whole speech is like the cool girl aspect of it, um, the persona of the cool girl. But for me, like this this start is just as interesting, because it's showing like a calculated long term manipulation that I guess like in movies we've only really seen in like real super villains, but it's been presented in this very like normal woman's character. Like she's not normal. Like she's exceptional. Like any character you'd aspire to be. She's not completely normal. She's attractive and intelligent. And yeah, I think it's like she's like amazing Amy. So she was sort of like a star as a child as well. So she's exceptional, but she's sort of like a suburban um, wife, basically. All right, so let's sort of piece this apart. Um, so Nick's sort of been looking for her at this point in the movie, and it sort of seems like they do have like the perfect life. Um, but then she really gets into it when she says, "Nick Dunn took my pride and my dignity and my hope and my money. He took and took from me until I no longer existed. That's murder." And yeah, I think that it's a great point. It's anytime you're in love with like another person, or you know a pursuit or a hobby or your work, um, love is sort of giving yourself away, and in a relationship you need to have a balance. So it does need, if you're giving, you need the other person to give. And I think what she's saying here is that Nick, he was happy to like, take her pride, her dignity, her hope, and her money. I mean, obviously he's not trying to take her hope, um, or her dignity. I'm sure that's not what that character is trying to do, but I think Amy sees it as, especially if she's giving her money over and her life, like, she sees herself as having like this potential in life, and then by marrying Nick, she's giving that potential over to him. I mean, she's sacrificed. It's a decision that she's made, um, because love is sacrifice, and she has sacrificed these things. But I think that idea of marriage that a lot of people have, um, I guess the hope that you go into it with, um, Amy is basically saying that that hope was unfulfilled. That she had all these hopes for these marriages, but in the end, she sees herself as the superior one to Nick, and she's just given her like she's put everything in, expecting that on the other end she's going to have an intelligent, capable man doing the same thing. And what she's found is that he hasn't been able to do that, um, and that is effectively her murder. And I do agree with her on that. In that, when you give yourself away or something is taken from you, your freedom, or um, your ability to be yourself, or your money, like all these things, it is the murder of your soul. Like it is a part of you dying. So it does make sense. And I think that in this specific example, there's probably plenty of women in marriages who have felt the same thing. They've gone into marriage with that hope that their partner is going to be everything for them, and they're going to have a great marriage, and that they've been left severely disappointed and feel like that they've given the best of themselves away, their resources, their time, and their dreams have died. And at the center of that is the husband, and they should be blamed for it. Now, this is tough. Like, it's not necessarily fair to lay all the blame on the husband or the wife in a failed marriage. Like, the whole concept of marriage is fraught with trouble, and we see there's a very high divorce rate now. So it's not that the partner is necessarily in the wrong, although that I'm sure they can be in many cases, but the whole systemic institution of marriage is leading to failure. And I think watching this as a 20-year-old who knew nothing, um, I think that's what really struck me, is that regret and that resentment that could arise, from a woman who was to marry, and that it might might be a best idea to avoid it. But anyway, let's kick on. So, second paragraph. to fake a convincing murder, you have to have discipline. Okay, so this this bit really got me when she says, "You you, you befriend a local idiot," and just the way like she does this a lot throughout this whole monologue, but just the emphasis she puts on idiot, and you see in the picture here, there's she's in a massive suburban house, and this woman is just walking down the street in her like her leggings and a little sports jacket, and she's got like a triple um, pram basically, and it always struck me as very interesting. I think having when I saw this, having had no idea what. I mean, I wouldn't have had a girlfriend at that point in my life, so I wouldn't even. It's like when you have a girlfriend and you can kind of get the insight into how their friend group works together. Well, it's obviously the character of Amy was a lot older than I was at that time, so I guess friendships between women, like young mothers, was something that I really, from an outsider, would have no idea about, and that you would I would have heard young mothers speaking, and I think that this next point, like the details of her humdrum life, um, it is what it was. Is how I saw it. Is that these women are like quite boring, to be honest. Like they just speak about um, very mundane things, and they just go on and on about um, yes, very mundane details, the humdrum life, and I just thought it was amazing that this character, this woman, is just calling it out like bluntly that this other person, this other woman, is an idiot, and I think that that's what gets lost a bit in this. When we look back on this monologue, because everyone talks about the cool girl, and it's almost a bit of like a feminist war cry, like, well, we're all in this together, we're all the cool girls. But Amy is not really like that. She is very, she has, she thinks she's superior to everyone, and including this other woman, like who's, maybe boring, but it basically acts as her friend. Um, and Amy's, she is not saying like all women are oppressed by their husbands or we're all cool girls. Like there are examples where she projects that onto other people later in the scene, but here it's this is what really got me, is that she is above that. She is above that. We're all the same. She sees herself as the smart one, and later she complains about Nick not being as smart as her, and that she has had to forge him, pull him along, and just her to to overlay the shot. Like when you go and watch the scene, the shot is overlaid with this friendly chat, and Amy obviously is beautiful, and she just looks very friendly and welcoming. Very suburban and open, and to have this coldness underneath, um, it was life changing for me, because it made me think there are people out there like this, and the fact that this has resonated with so many people means that not that doesn't necessarily mean everyone has to be exactly like Amy, but there is something in this that people think about. So perhaps this, and it is very American Beauty, like that idea of the suburban life is not all as it seems. But this one with Amy particularly got me. And then in the last paragraph, she sort of goes on about how pregnant women are upheld as um, like what we want as a society, which is maybe a little bit different now, but at that moment, it makes sense. And yes, you probably would have heard a lot about, um, yeah, pregnant pregnant women, and Amy sort of making the point that it's not particularly hard to get pregnant as a woman, and I think she almost has a disdain for the fact that praise is heaped upon a woman for just getting pregnant, when and then she goes through, like she's goes through all these steps to get this gone girl thing happening to frame her husband, and what is hard, faking a pregnancy, draining the toilet, like manipulating the idiot friend, and then manipulating your legal medical records, like, and Amy, she knows that she can't get public praise for this because it's against the law, against like the rules of society. But she is showing, not only a resentment for her husband later on, as we'll see, but a resentment for the fact that the society is not rewarding her intelligence and it is instead more likely to celebrate women for just getting pregnant, which, as she says, is not hard to do. So anyway, we'll move on. All right. So the second page here. So I'll just read it through again. So wait for your clueless husband to start his day. Off he goes, and the clock is ticking. Meticulously stage your crime scene with just enough mistakes to raise the specter of doubt. You need to bleed a lot, a lot, a lot. A head wound kind of bleed, a crime scene kind of bleed. You need to clean poorly, like he would. Clean and bleed, bleed and clean. Leave a little something behind. A fire in July. And because you're you, you don't stop there. You need a diary. Minimum 300 entries on the Nick and Amy story. Start with the fairy tale early days. Those are true and they're crucial. You want Nick and Amy to be likable. After that, you invent the spending, the abuse, the fear, the threat of violence. And Nick thought he was the writer. Burn it just the right amount. Make sure the cops will find it. Finally, on a tradition with a very special treasure hunt. And if I get everything right, the world will hate Nick for killing his beautiful pregnant wife. And after all the outrage, when I'm ready, I'll go out in the water with a handful of pills and a pocket full of stones. And when they find my body, they'll know. Nick Dunn dumped his beloved like garbage, and she floated down past all the other used, unwanted, inconvenient women. Then Nick will die too. All right, so she's sort of executing her plan here. There's some details about the crime scene. Then she has a crack at him. You need to clean poorly, like he would, which is a pretty generic complaint about men that they don't clean well enough. I don't know. It seems a bit like that's very much for the benefit of the audience because it's just a very generic thing. Like it's not something really clever that I think Amy is capable of in other parts of this monologue. But anyway, another interesting point is the diary. So start with the fairy tale early days. Those are true and they're crucial. So I remember watching this and thinking, and as I've thought about this scene over the years, that yes, even in this story, which is basically a horror story, and she's framing him for her murder, and she hates him. She's criticizing him. She thinks he's an idiot. All of these things that the early days were fairy tale, um, and that was true. So I think it shows that even if you have a relationship that starts off well, not only well, but as good as a fairy tale, it can still end up like this. And that's the interesting part. Like, you may think, oh, my relationship is different. And I'm not saying every relationship will end up like this, but it's something to be aware of, particularly when it comes to marriage, which is, you sort of you're not necessarily locking yourself in for life, but you are putting yourself in a predicament by doing so. Um, if you're just in a relationship, it's easy to just reassess as you go along if the relationship is still beneficial for both parties. But yeah, this is another key point that relationships can start off well, but still end up like this. So just because you've found someone that you really like, it doesn't take you off the hook that things can change drastically. And I don't know how old these characters are. I guess they're probably like in their mid 30s, but it's not like in a long, long, long time in the future, like this could turn bad. Like mid 30s is still pretty young. Like this has turned bad over a matter of years, maybe a decade. Um, from a fairy tale to Gone Girl in a decade. So yeah, that narrative, and like she's writing a diary, but that narrative of fairy tale to all this horrible things that and Nick isn't doing all these things. It's she says you invent the spending, the abuse, the fear, the threat of violence. So that is all invented. Like that didn't happen. But Amy still believes that because getting married to Nick has taken her hope and her money and uh, yeah, I guess her belief that life can be good. She thinks that inventing these things like spending, abuse, fear, like these are things that she can write about. So if the police find it or whoever else finds it, if when the public is assessing her crimes, she's just translating the death of her soul through the loss of her hope into things that the public can understand. So she knows that if she just writes honestly about, I guess, her spiritual experience, her spiritual death, that that is not going to be enough, or people may not understand that the seriousness of like the death that she's gone through, the murder that she's gone through. So she has to translate it into things like abuse and threat of violence that are very much in the public discourse that she knows will garner sympathy. But I think in her mind, she believes that what she went through is just as bad as the things that she's inventing. And then, okay, at the end, she sort of says about how she's going to go out into the water, and there's a very like harrowing scene where she's like floating down in the water with like this sort of dead face and open mouth. It's like very dramatic. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if she's really saying that she's going to do this, like she's going to commit suicide because she kind of gets away, but then like I think it's meant to be metaphorical, like that's how she feels that sort of Nick has cheated and that she's of no longer use, that she's been used up, that she's, I think it's just a metaphor for her spiritual death or her death of use as she sees from Nick's perspective. Um, and yeah, the end line, she floated down past all the other used, unwanted, inconvenient women. Yeah, it's rough, isn't it? So it's like when she gets cheated on, and now it's like just that inconvenient women line. It's almost like the wrath that comes from that. She, yeah, I think for me when I watched it, I said, okay, like so whether there's cheating or not in a relationship, the fact that relationships sort of explode and then maybe up until the marriage and then slowly die, slowly fade. Um, and I think it happens on both sides. Like both people can feel like that, but it's almost like gain this awareness that there will be women out there like deep into relationships who do feel this like used, unwanted, and inconvenient. Um, and maybe not inconvenient like, oh, I'm inconvenient, but in a spiteful way that they are, oh, I'm inconvenient for you now. Um, so yeah, it's interesting. It's like a lot of media right now is just complete rubbish, as we know. But sometimes s- something will come through that is so true that just strikes a chord with so many people that you'd be an idiot not to realize it. And I remember when I watched this scene, there was other family members in the room, and I just sat there like open mouthed with amazement because it wasn't just another day; it was a day that I had found this insight. I'd found this secret that I may have not otherwise found until I experienced it, until maybe I became the Nick Dunn. And instead, I was able to correct course and really see this as a warning, because not only were was this revealing something that's sort of hidden under the waters, but by putting this out into this big movie, like obviously David Fincher directed the movie, so a lot of people are going to see it. This might ignite the feelings in other women that just because they think sometimes it's true, sometimes sometimes they don't like their relationships, that now all of a sudden that they're the Amy Dunn, and like that they've given everything and they've suffered this murder, and maybe be inspired to do something similar, and not necessarily go full Gone Girl, but just end the relationship or divorce, or just start on this tirade. But anyway, we'll get to the third slide. So this is the Cool Girl section, and this is sort of the part everyone remembers. But I think that the previous parts were just as important and just as crucial, to the knowledge sharing. But anyway, I'll read this. So Nick and Amy will be gone, but then we never really existed. Nick loved a girl I was pretending to be. Cool girl. Men always use that, don't they? As their defining compliment. She's a cool girl. Cool girl is hot. Cool girl is game. Cool girl is fun. Cool girl never gets angry at her man. She only smiles in a chagrin loving manner and then presents her mouth for fucking. She likes what he likes, so evidently he's a vinyl hipster who likes fetishmonger. If he likes girls gone wild, she's a mall babe who talks football and endures buffalo wings at Hooters. When I met Nick Dunn, he wanted Cool Girl, and for him, I'll admit, I was willing to try. I wax stripped my pussy raw. I drank canned beer watching Adam Sandler movies. I ate cold pizza and remained a size 2. I blew him, semi regularly. I lived in the moment. I was fucking game. I can't say I didn't enjoy some of it. Nick teased out of me things I didn't know existed, a lightness, a humor, an ease. But I made him smarter, sharper. I inspired him to rise to my level. I forged the man of my dreams. All right, so Nick and Amy were gone, but then we never really existed. So look, they did exist. They were, well, they didn't because this is a work of fiction, but they were two people who were in a relationship. Um, and then the Nick loved a girl I was pretending to be Cool Girl. So look, she's talking about putting on a persona, being a chameleon to, I guess, win that man over, and specifically, look, here's what I think is important here is that Amy sees herself as superior to Nick, but that due to the constraints of society and maybe her lack of options in finding, um, other partners who were on her intellectual level, that she had to drop her standards to get Nick, someone who wasn't as intelligent and sharp as she was, but also that because of her role as being a woman in society, that she also had to then be a chameleon and sort of fake a persona to get him to like her. So she's using her cunning to even get Nick, and she's thinking that she's settling for Nick. So the this sort of indicates that the dynamic that Nick sort of has more power in the relationship, and she's like, "This is ridiculous. Like I'm the powerhouse here." And so Cool Girl. So this is, I think, why it's very popular. This part is because it is, again, I find this monologue it drifts between specific like Amy Dunn intellectual mastermind and then like very generic, um like woman aspects of being in a relationship with a man. Like the Cool Girl is something that I think anyone can relate to, and that's why that phrase has been the thing that has survived from this whole monologue, even though I find other parts of it more interesting. Um, okay, so Cool Girl is hot, Cool Girl is game, Cool Girl is fun, Cool Girl never gets angry at her man. Um, Again, when I saw this, I had not had much experience with relationships, so I wasn't able to see this and then say, "Oh, I've put someone into this role, or someone's done this role for me." It was more of a warning sign that this could happen. And I will tell a story. Actually, I think after watching this, I got actually a Cool Girl radar, and the way I see it is basically the Cool Girl is doing things that her man likes. Now, in any relationship, it requires a bit of, you should be interested in your partner's interests, you know, a bit like both ways. Um, but you shouldn't feel that you are sacrificing yourself to to be exactly what your partner wants. Um, but I think it is part of what women do is that if they really like man, they will act interested in his interest in what he's doing, even if they're maybe not super interested in the pursuit itself. They're just trying to get close to him, which is great. I think that's fine. But I think what Amy is sort of complaining about here is that she's done all of this. Like she's had the pizza and beer, watched the Adam Sandler movies, blew him, which is I don't know, sort of weird to complain about. Like if you wanted to do it at the time, but um, I think that just comes into like these things can change over time, so you need to be aware of that. But she's doing all these things that Nick likes, but I think she resents the fact that he doesn't even recognize that that's what she's doing. Like she sort of sees him as an idiot because she's like, "Can't you see I'm doing all these things like being really sexy, like doing all these like really dude things um as like a compromise, like I'm compromising for you." And the resentment comes in the fact that I think Nick, he hasn't seen that that's what she's doing. He's just like, oh, she's a cool girl, like that's what she actually likes. When she's sort of saying like, look, it's I she's like, I can't say I didn't enjoy some of it. So I think she's like, yeah, I can go and do all these guy things, but at the end of the day, it's like that's not who she is. And the fact that Nick doesn't recognize that she's just doing that for him, like he thinks that she's a cool girl, like that's actually her personality. And I think the fact that he doesn't know that, she's sort of like, how thick can you be? Like, why are you not, um, like, why can't you compromise back or like give me a break? Like, or at least appreciate that I am being the cool girl for you. Like that um, yeah, like I'm acting casual, like eating all this pizza and then like saying skinny. Like it's he just thinks she's being casual, she's cool, like, and she's like, I'm putting in like heaps of work um, to make this relationship work, and then you can't even do the same thing. Like back at the start, she's saying he's sucking all her resources, her money, her hopes and dreams. And so she sees Nick. The start of the relationship is a fairy tale. She knows what men want, so she becomes that because she's a smart woman. And then, but after a while, she realizes that Nick is maybe not that she thought he was, and that all she's doing is sacrificing herself to no end. Um, I don't think it's like I think a lot of the discourse boils down to, well, it's just that women are, yeah, we're all faking it, and like we don't want to be what men want to be, and like there's some truth in that, but I think that that's an oversimplification. It's more that she's happy to compromise a bit. She's happy to, she finds it fun to an extent. But if he doesn't recognize that she's even compromising, and he's just like thinks that she's like another guy, like she's just, I think she's just fed up that it's that this guy doesn't even understand like what she's doing. Like he doesn't have the intellect to be aware, and maybe he just doesn't know, maybe he doesn't have the experience, and maybe this whole thing is touching on a nerve in society that men didn't understand women well enough. um, but that's why when you see things like this, you should learn. So yeah, I'll tell a story. Um, I remember I was dating someone once, and it was like, and she was no Amy Dunn, like she wasn't. um, I always see Amy. The part of the reason this struck me so much is that it's that um, like that Myers-Briggs introverted intuition. I don't know. People might not like Myers-Briggs, but it's it's that ability to think. Oh, sorry, have that intuition and like make plans and just think of the world in this certain way. And it's like INTJ, INFJ. Um, they're the main ones, and then I think that the extroverted versions of them as well. Whenever they're like ENFJ, ENTJ, whenever they're thinking or having their introverted intuition. And I think seeing this from a woman is quite rare, especially like stripped back like this. Like you'd think Amy should be pretty good at Survivor or something like that. But yeah, so anyway, this girl I was dating, she definitely wasn't uh, intuition dominant, but she was doing the cool girl thing where she was just being overly interested in my hobbies, but not in a way that like she wasn't really asking the right questions to get to the core of what it was. So I knew that she wasn't really interested in them, which is fine. Like I think you should. It is good to show interest in the other person's hobbies, and even if you're not particularly interested in yourself. But it was, just my cool girl radar went up, and I was like, okay, so she's not really interested in these at all, but she's showing a lot of over the top interest, and I could see that that was sort of part of her game. Is like I'll show her the interest in the hobbies, and then he will think that I'm interested. Um, and yeah, she was really nice, but there's just something about it that was it's just a bit deceitful because it's just trapping you in that she's interested in that. Um, and I never felt like I could really be myself around her. And not that I ever got vibes that she was like Amy Dunn or whatever, but Amy Dunn was the cool girl at the start of the movie and right up until this point. So maybe she was, because this is the thing. Like this is why this scene's so shocking, is because you don't think that this character is really like this. Um, anyway, I sort of followed that girl's progress. So we sort of stopped seeing each other when I think she realized that we weren't going to get married or anything. But I followed her after that, and she had, in the space of about 2 years, she had two boyfriends serious enough to post about on social media. Um, and then they didn't work out. And then I think a year later, she had a third guy, um, and then she was married to him. So I could really sense that when I was with her that she was she was just pushing towards, I think, getting married, and it really didn't matter like who the guy was. Like if I look at myself and the other guys she dated, like there's nothing super common about us. Um, I would say attractive, but not too attractive. Like she probably could have got interest from more attractive guys, but the commitment would have been harder to get out of them. So I think that she had her she had her target audience lined up, but then maybe that's like Amy with Nick, where it's like no, she didn't get the most intelligent guy. Like she didn't get the guy that she liked the most, and then she was, yeah, as she says here, she was willing to try, but eventually, like the damn wall just breaks, and it's like no, I'm not putting up with this. And so yeah, so that girl, I sort of see the same. So who knows? I think she's only been married a year or two now, but it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds, I guess, as we can sort of see with social media now. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's not that it ends up like this, but that maybe it breaks down at some point, because she was clearly just looking for a guy, and she was putting on the cool girl act. And I think that for me, having seen this scene, and I've seen it probably 100 times now, but having seen it at 20, which is pretty young, and just being able to remember that knowledge, that has probably enabled me to be aware of when the cool girl is being had on you. And look, Nick in this movie, he's pretty successful, I think. Like he's a writer, which I do find it weird that there's the line, I drank canned beer watching Adam Sandler movies, like, because if Nick, like if he really was a writer, like I don't I don't understand why he'd be watching Adam Sandler movies all the time. Like, unless he was a complete hack. Like, why would you be watching sort of more lower common denominator films? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think that's just sort of thrown in there for the audience, like, because like what women are gonna like Adam Sandler movies? Like none. Um, but a lot of basic bros kind of do. So that's a strange line. But anyway, Nick, look, they're look, they live in an affluent area. I think he's got a good network. So I think Nick in this movie, like that character would have been used to being pumped up his whole life. And so Amy comes in and she does the cool girl act on him, he doesn't smell a rat because, and not that she's a rat, like I don't think she went into it with bad intentions, but he doesn't understand that she's acting a little bit. She's got the cool girl persona on. He doesn't see that because everyone has just sort of been bowing to his feet for his whole life. Whereas I think more more regular guys who don't live the life that Nick does, most of the time, like no one gives a shit about you. Like you don't, I'm not saying that everyone hates you, but like you're just neutral. Like no one is fawning over you, telling you you're fantastic all the time. People are just polite for the most part. So when when you sort of live like that for years, and then you have a woman who's probably around that age where she wants to date seriously, and um, all of a sudden she's showing all this tension on you, and she's really interested in what you're doing. Like it, it is it is a bit easier, I think, to understand that she's sort of just doing it to get what she wants, which that can be, mutually beneficial, but it's not that she's just super interested in everything that you're doing. She doesn't love all your hobbies and your video games and things like that. Not that that was my hobby, but I guess that's just a classic one that guys have, or a classic meme that guys spend all their time playing video games. But yeah, if a girl comes in, she's super interested in that. Like, you got to suss out if that's legit or if she's just trying to be the cool girl, which I think is the lesson from this scene. And when you're given the opportunity to see what people really think, or a truth about society, you should take that opportunity with open hands because it could help you later. But anyway, that's my long-winded thoughts on the Cool Girl Monologue. Um, Certainly has had a big impact on my life and something I think about regularly. I'm going to look to make a few more videos in this series, um, potentially on other films or TV shows or song lyrics or things like that. Just things that have given me an insight into understanding the world better, that have shaped my life. But anyway, thank you for listening. If you've made it this far, if you're interested in more content like this, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.